Good day everyone, my name is Delmo Erika, and in this video we have a research project in computer programming covering the entire process from problem understanding, algorithm formulation to coding and debugging. And here's our problem understanding and analysis about payroll system. In many workplaces, employees rely on time card to keep track of their working hours, which are monitored by HR. The payroll system provides a convenient way for employees to monitor their earnings. For input, the user will enter their name, then user will enter the numbers of hours they have worked along with their hourly wage and tax rate. In the process, the system calculates the total wage by multiplying the hours worked by the hourly rate. The system calculates the gross salary multiplying the tax rate given that multiplied by 100. The system calculates the net salary deducting gross salary by the tax amount. For output, the system displays the total computed wage, giving employees a clear and accurate summary of their earnings for a given pay period.
Good day everyone, I am Angela Quillain and I explain to you the step-by-step process for our payroll system. The algorithm begins by asking the user to enter their name. The input is checked to make sure it only contains letters. So if the name includes numbers or symbols, the program will reject it and say invalid name, please enter letters only. Otherwise, the name is stored as the employee's name. Next, the user is asked to input the working hours. So if the working hours are between 0 and 105, the input is accepted. But if it goes beyond the range, the program will display invalid working hours must be between 1 and 105. This makes sure that the hours entered are realistic. So after that, the user enters the hourly rate. This value must be between 0 and 1000. If it is valid, it's stored in a variable called hourly rate. If not, the program will say invalid rate. The program then asks for tax rate. This is stored as tax rate, but divided by 100 so that it becomes percentage ready for calculation. Once all the inputs are valid, the program performs the calculation. The product of working hours and hourly rate will be the gross salary. The product of gross salary and tax rate will be the tax amount. So after computing, the program checks if the tax amount or the net salary is valid. So if the tax amount is less than 0 and greater than 1 million, the program will display invalid tax. If the net salary is less than 0 and greater than 1 million, it will display invalid net salary. So if all the values are valid, the program then displays the results in a clear summary format showing the employee's name, the hours worked, the gross salary, the tax amount, and the net salary. So finally, the algorithm ends. So to summarize, the program takes inputs, validates them, calculates the salary, and then displays the results.
Hi, good day. I will explain to you guys our pseudocode starting from the program. The program begins and asks the user to enter their name. Next is the name validation. If the name contains characters other than letters, like numbers or symbols, the program shows invalid name. Please enter letters only. Next is the working hours. If the name is valid, the program asks for the employee's working hours. It should only accept values between 1 and 105. If the input is outside this range, it shows invalid working hours must be between 1 and 105. Next is the hourly rate. Next, the program asks the hourly rate. It should only accept values between 1 and 999. If invalid, it shows invalid rate. Next is tax rate. The program then asks for the tax rate as a percentage. it is converted into a decimal form. Example, 10% is equals to 0.10.
Next, the program will calculate the employee's gross salary by using the formula of gross salary equals hours worked times hours rate. If the calculated tax amount is greater than 1 million or less than or equal to 0, the program will display invalid tax. Next is calculating the net salary of employee by subtracting. Using a formula of gross salary minus tax rate. If the net salary is greater than 1 million or less than or equal to 0, then the program will display invalid salary. Else, if all the input are valid, then the program will finally display the employee's information, including employee's name, working hours, gross salary, tax amount, and net salary. This output will serve as a employee's salary summary.
Good day everyone, I am Christel Cansicio, and today I will be discussing the process of our flowchart in payroll system. A flowchart is a diagram that uses different symbols to show the steps and decisions in a program. So as you can see, meron tayong terminal symbol dito na usually may nakalagay na start or end. After that, gagawa tayo ng parallelogram na nagsisimbolize ng input. At dito natin ilalagay yung employee name or input name. Next, we create a decision symbol. Ito yung yung sa pa-diamond shape. Dito mangyayari ang decision making kasi i-check natin if the input is only letters from A to Z or lowercase or not. Then, kapag invalid yung nilagay mo, magdi-display siya ng invalid name, please enter letters only. Then, kapag naman valid, magpo-proceed na tayo sa next steps. Next is hours work. Same process. Gagamit tayo ng parallelogram para sa input. Then, ilalagay natin yung hours work. After that, mag-create ulit tayo ng decision symbol. And dito naman, i-check ng system if the number is greater than or equal to 0. And less than or equal to 105. Kapag invalid ang input, the system will display invalid working hours. Must be between 1 and 1.5. But if the input is valid, we proceed to the hourly rate. Next is hourly rate. Same process lang din na gagawin, pero magkaiba sila ng decision. Gagamit tayo ng parallelogram para sa input at ilalagay naman natin is hourly rate. And after that, mag-create na tayo ng decision symbol. Dito naman, i-check naman ng system if the number is greater than or equal to 0 and less than 100. And kapag invalid ang input, magdi-display siya ng invalid rate. Kapag naman is valid yung inilagay niya, magpo-proceed na tayo sa tax rate. Next is the tax rate. Same input lang, gagamit rin ulit tayo ng parallelogram para sa input at ilalagay naman natin is tax rate. After that, dito naman magkakaroon tayo ng computation. Kaya gagamit tayo ng rectangle para sa process. Sa process, naka-indicates dito ang gross salary equal hours work times hourly rate. Then, tax rate is equal to gross salary times tax rate. Sa process, naka-indicates dito ang gross salary equal hours work times hourly rate. At tax amount is equal to gross salary times tax rate. Then, we will create two decision symbols. Yung una, i-check natin if the variable tax amount is greater than 1 million or less than 0. If invalid, the system will display invalid tax amount. But if valid, we proceed to the net salary. The second decision, check if the variable net salary is greater than 1 million or less than 0. If invalid, the system will display invalid net salary. But if valid, we proceed to the output. Finally, we use a parallelogram to display the result. Naka-indicates dito yung employee name, hours work, gross salary, tax amount, and net salary. Then, we end. And that's all for the flowchart in payroll system.
Good day everyone, let me introduce to you our final debugging. Ang aming pong Java project ay payroll system. Ang ginagawa po nito ay kinakalculate po nito ang sahod ng isa pong trabahador, ang kanila pong hourly rate, working hours, and tax deduction. So, ang ginawa po namin, una, hihingi ng program yung unang name ng isang employee. May validation kami dito. Dapat letters and space lang. Kapag naglagay ka ng number o symbols, automatic sasabihin ng program invalid name at titigil siya.
Papaliwanag ko naman yun, ang working hours and hour rate. Pagkatapos ilagay yung name, next naman na i-input yung working hours. Ilagay naman ito ng limit between 1 to 105 hours lamang kasi kung masyadong mababa o sobra, hindi na realistic. Kapag lagpas naman, error agad. After that, hihingan naman ng program yung hour rate. Dapat less than 1,000 yung ilalagay para maiwasan yung sobrang unrealistic na rate. Kapag mali yung input, same thing. Merong message agad at stop na agad yung program.
So for my topic, it should be tax rate, process, and output. My next input will be tax rate in a form of percent. It should be between 0 to 100. Then, we will convert it into a decimal point that we can use in our computation along with other valid inputs. Our formula will be gross salary equals working hours times hourly rate. Then, tax amount equals gross salary, then tax rate. Then lastly, net salary equals gross salary subtract by tax amount. Our output will be employee name, working hours, gross salary, tax amount, and net salary. Also, if there's an error, there should be a warning message that is related to tax.
Good morning everyone, my name is Ian Rosales and now we're going to do the Java implementation. Now the first thing we're actually going to do is we're going to import Java scanner so that our users can have a user-friendly interface that we can have. And then we're going to declare our scanner. We're going to put scanner system.in. Then our next thing we're going to do is actually we're going to identify our three IPOs, which is the input, the process, and the output. Now, what is our input for our payroll system for our project? We can have the employee, for example. Next is working hours. We can put working hours. Then the next is hourly rate. And lastly, we have our tax rate. Now, we can actually change the data type for each of our variables. For example, we can put string. Then we can use int. We can use float on both the hourly rate and the tax rate. And then since we're going to start with the employee, we're actually going to put our print line. We're going to put a print line, which is enter your name here, or just enter your name. Then we're actually going to change our variables since variables are case sensitive. We're going to put string employee, and then we're going to use our scanner, which is s dot next line. Then our next variable would be the working hours. We're going to print our message, which is working hours. And then again, we're just gonna abbreviate or simplify our we're going to simplify our variables, which is working hours. We can just use our variables hours work, and then we're going to use a scanner, which is scan next int. Our next will be the hourly rate, just the same as both of the inputs that I've typed. We're actually going to put hourly rate in here. Then just the same as the other variables, we're actually going to simplify. We're going to simplify our variables. We're just gonna put hours rate in here, and then just like last time, we're just gonna use our system that output print line to print our last input, which is tax rate, and then we can actually abbreviate it, and then put our scanner. We're gonna put our scanner in. I actually forgot to put a scanner in the hourly rate, so I'm just gonna put it. Next, float. Once our inputs are done, we're actually going to move on from our processes. Now, the processes is actually very easy, which we have three. Actually, we have the gross pay, the gross salary, we have the tax amount, and then we have the net salary. Again, we're going to simplify our variables so we don't get confused. Then we're going to put float on all three of them. Going to put float of all three of them, and then once that's done, once we have simplified our variables, we're actually going to understand what the value of the gross salary is, which is hours worked multiplied by hours rate, or the hourly rate is multiplied by working hours. And then the next would be tax amount, which is the gross salary multiplied by the tax rate that we input. Then lastly is the net salary, which is just the gross salary multiplied or minus subtracted by tax amount. Actually going to change our variable here, the tax amount. Once that's done, we're going to do the last model, which is the output. Now the output, we can just have multiple of print line, we can have multiple messages, because we're actually going to concatenate the message with our different variables in here. It's going to put hello employee, then we're going to concatenate our first message with employee with the variable that has inputted. Then the next would be working hours. I'm going to put that in, working hours, and then the variable, which is the hours work. Next will be the hourly rate, or we can actually go to the gross salary first. We're going to get gross salary, then the variable gross salary. Then the next would be the tax amount. I'm going to put our tax amount, concatenate it with the variable that is tax amount, which is equals to gross salary multiplied by tax rate. And then lastly will be the net salary. salary, which is the value of gross salary subtracted by the tax amount. So that's actually all of our IPO models. Now we have our employee, our hours rate, tax rate, that's our inputs, and then the processes. And once the process computes the given variables, and then it's going to go to the outputs, which is displayed on the system.out.print line, which is in the last output. We're actually going to see if our code works. So let's see if the code works. I'm going to see here. Enter your name. Once we enter our name, we're just going to put our working hours, the hourly rate, and then the tax rate. As you can see, the code works, but there's still a problem in the net salary because it's too low, and then it actually inputs it even though it's too low. So we're actually going to change that in our next segment, which is the debugging part of the Java implementation. So that's all that I can give you. I'm going to go to the next part. So now we're going to move on with our debugging and our edge cases in our Java project. The first, I think, is the first edge case is actually figuring out if the user has inputted the right data type. So if the user has inputted the wrong data type, we can actually put an error message in it. So actually we're going to put string in here. Let's just say it's our variable will be invalid name, and then our condition will be if the employee matches the first condition, which is from A to Z. We need to actually put it in the condition, which is A to Z and small case and then capital case. Then we're going to put our ternary conditions, which is if it's right, since it actually can't stop the code, we're actually going to copy our working hours, since the value of ternary operators cannot be, it can't be stopped. So now we're actually going to delete the system print. And then for our next condition, we're actually going to put invalid name. Please enter letters only. So now we're going to print our next. We're going to print our string, which is the invalid name. Print invalid name. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually remove this space over here. Actually, let's see what was the error. The equal sign. So now that it's correct, we're actually going to remove our spaces. The system output invalid name onto the front. So now we have our first edge cases. So let's see if this actually works. If we put an integer in here, let's say 15, it says invalid name, please enter letters only. So that means our first edge case our first debugging works. So now we're going to actually we can comment on this, but first we have to do the string then we're going to put our variable invalid hours, and then the next condition will be if our hours worked is greater than or equal to 0, and our hours worked is less than or equal to 106. That's our limit for our invalid hours, since we actually included the limits of the hours worked, which is 106. Our first ternary condition that we can actually input here is the hourly rate. So we're going to copy the hourly rate to our program. I'm just gonna clean it up, and then the next condition will be, actually we're going to remove that. The next condition we're going to be, let's just say invalid hours or invalid working hours must be between 1 and 105. So now our condition here will be if our hours worked is greater or equal to 0, and the hours worked is less than or equal to 106, we're actually going to put invalid working hours must be between 1 and 105. So actually we're going to print our invalid hours just like you see here, and then we're going to clean it. Actually, we can actually put a comment on this. We can put an edge case, say edge case 1, we have edge case 2, then we're going to have the edge case 3, which is the hourly rate. So now we're going to actually continue our hourly rate, and then we can see if our variables are correct, like the ternary conditions are correct. So now we were going to go to our next edge case, which is the hourly rate. So let me put string invalid rate is equals to hourly rate, hours rate. We can put the hours rate in here is greater than or equal to 0, and the hours rate is less than or equal to, since we actually don't have a limit to the hourly rate, we can just put 1,000 in here. We can actually put 1,000 in here, since it is the limit of the invalid rate. This is our given or inputted limit. So now we're actually going to put our first ternary condition, first ternary operator to input. We're going to copy the tax rate, then we're going to remove the print line. Then the next condition will be invalid rate. So then we're gonna print, going to system.out that print line invalid rate. So just gonna remove the space here. So our next, now that all of our edge cases in the inputs is done, we have our edge case 1, edge case 2, edge case 3, we are actually going to divide our tax rate, since the tax rate is usually in decimal. It's usually in decimal, so we have to divide the value of tax rate to 100 so that it matches. We can actually put a percentage in here so that we can actually see that if a user has inputted the whole number, we can actually divide it by 100 and then convert it to decimal. So now we're going to do the edge cases for our processes. So the edge cases in the processes usually is in the tax amount, and we're going to put the error message in the below the tax amount. To string invalid. That's actually the wrong tax amount. Just gonna put invalid or inv tax amount. Intax. Invalid tax. So now invalid tax. We're going to actually put our tax amount in here, which is tax amount is if the tax amount is less than 0 or the tax amount is greater than 1 million, since no one can actually have that much amount of tax amount. That's going to be our limit. We're actually going to put another ternary condition here, ternary operators. Going to put invalid tax amount. And then for our next condition, since the properties of ternary conditions usually cannot stop, we're actually just gonna put a space in here, because if we're using if-else statements, we can actually use break or we can use return to stop the code when the input is wrong. So now we're going to print our invalid tax. So now we're going to the next edge case, which is the final edge case from the project, for our project. We're just gonna do this again. String invalid or just invalid. What's it again? What's invalid tax? I believe was that. So now we're gonna put invalid is net salary is less than 0 or our net salary is greater than, again, 1 million. You can actually put 1 million here since the net salary cannot go above 1 million. So our first ternary condition will be invalid. I'm gonna put invalid net salary over here. And then for our next condition, since once again the properties of ternary operators cannot be stopped, we're actually going to put our first output in our process, the hello employee plus the employee, because we cannot actually stop the program since it uses ternary operators. We're actually going to remove the print line. Going to remove our print line and just gonna use space to indicate that there's nothing in here. It's like null. We're going to put a null value in here so we can actually continue with our code and don't get much errors from the ternary operators themselves. Employee. And now we're going to print our invalid net salary. Valid net And that's it. We actually have successfully put a debug on most of the things, and we're actually going to use our console to see if the code works. So let's see our first edge case here. I think that's actually missing. It's actually missing some points, because yes, sure, we can put an integer in here, but we can actually see that it's missing something. It's missing a plus sign. It's actually missing a plus sign. So now that we've inputted the plus sign, we can actually go to our next edge case, which is the invalid hours. And I think there's actually another error in here. The 1000 part actually needs to remove the equal sign, so you can actually not go beyond 4 digits. Okay, so let's enter our name, let's enter our working hours, let's enter our hourly rate, and you see it inputted the invalid rate. It shows the error message as the invalid rate. Okay, now we're actually gonna input the correct hourly rate. Let's just say it's 65. Now, once that is done, quickly do the tax rate. And the tax rate is divided by 100. So if you put, for example, in our edge case 3, if we put, for example, like we put here 10, it's actually going to divide it, and it's going to be 0.1. And once that's 0.1, then we're going to enter it. We're going to enter our thing. And look, the employee work, the code actually works. As you can see here, the gross salary is 3,900, and it's divided by 0.1. It's going to be the tax amount, which is 390, and then 3,900 minus 390 will be our net salary, which is 3,510. So that's all for the Java implementation and the debugging. Actually going to move on to the next presentation that is upcoming. That is all that I can give you, and thank you very much.